So Square Enix might be back, at least from the downward trend their finances have been spiraling towards. They uploaded their Q1 financial results and the numbers, well, they are extremely promising. Here's why that matters, why you should care, how we got here, and where we go from here. Hello everybody, it's your boy Jmulls, and you could say these numbers are Evercold. Let's skip all the BS and get right into the thick of it. The HD game's net sales went up 8.8 billion yen year over year, going from 8.9 billion to 17.7 billion. Operating income is even more impressive, up 5.1 billion yen year over year, going from a measly 1 billion yen to 6.1 billion. And they attribute this largely to stronger sales of new titles and catalog titles. I mean, yeah, that makes sense. Turns out when you sell more games, you make more money. The MMO division did go up, but not as much. Net sales went up 3.1 billion yen year over year, going from 9.6 billion to 12.7 billion. However, due to upfront costs recognized ahead of its scheduled release, operating income only went up by 0.03 billion yen year over year, going from 3.6 billion to 3.6 billion. Not nearly as impressive, but it is going up, and they attribute this to the announcement of the latest expansion for Final Fantasy XIV, Evercold. And then games for smart devices or PC browser, net sales went up 5.1 billion yen year over year, going from 14.3 billion to 19.4 billion. However, when it comes to operating income, it did go up 2.4 billion yen year over year, going from 3.3 billion to 5.7 billion. And when we look at it broken down by region, yeah, the numbers are going up, though package went down, though funnily enough, only for North America or Europe. It went from 0.45 million units sold to 0.43 million units sold. Whereas for Japan and Asia, etc., that's funny, package went up from 0.07 for Japan to 0.16 and 0.04 for Asia, etc. to 0.14. But still, despite that, these numbers went up a lot for total, from 2.88 million units sold in North America and Europe to 4.59. And we're seeing large percentage increases in Japan and Asia as well. So what's going on and how did this happen? Let's begin with the MMO division. It's fair to say that the announcement for Evercold sparked a lot of renewed interest in Final Fantasy XIV. With the end of the Heidelin and Zodiac arc, people got a great conclusion to that story. They got an off-ramp. And when the story that followed, and you can argue either the Endwalker patches or Dawntrail 7.0 itself, just didn't live up to par to what had come before, more and more people were checking out. They didn't like the tone, the atmosphere, the story, or the storytelling of Dawntrail. And for a lot of people, the fear was that was going to be the new norm. And if that was going to be the new norm, it just simply didn't grab as many people as the old story did. When it comes to the announcement of Evercold, it felt like they ran down a list of community feedback. And I talked about this before in my own coverage of Evercold. It felt like, and I know they didn't, but it felt like they went back through my backlog and just covered every main critique I have with the game. It felt systematic. Now, I don't think for even a second they're going to fully address and incorporate all the changes that I would want to say what they were talking about, what they continue to talk about. And the things that they show, to me, are drastic improvements, from both small things to large overarching design changes for the game that I am personally appreciative of, and I don't think I'm alone here. All of those negative elements I just associate with Dawntrail, Evercold corrects. The tone, the vibe, the feeling, the writing, the pacing, even in the trailer, is so much better. The world is so much cooler, and I promise that's not just a pun on the name Evercold. But the zones of the game taking place in the backs of giant airships suspended over a world that has been overtaken by this relentless, endless winter. What a great premise that is. Where giant colossi of different elements roam the land. That is a great premise. That is interesting. People get excited for that. They want to find out more. They want to know what happens. And when you pair that with talking about a lot of changes for the game, for the release cadence of patches, about making sure that Square Enix itself will reinvest into Final Fantasy XIV properly, all those different elements matter by themselves, but they matter so much more when taken holistically. Even if not everything is perfect, the intention is there, and the intention matters for a lot of people. They got tired of the same old, same old. They wanted something new, they wanted something exciting that still felt like Final Fantasy XIV, that appealed to the elements of what made Final Fantasy XIV so beloved to begin with. And Evercold is seemingly doing that. Do we know if it's going to stick the landing? Absolutely not. We don't don't know, it's not out till January. But the things they're talking about and what they show, both of those elements are far more in line with what people want out of Final Fantasy XIV. So while yeah, people are still playing Dawntrail because Evercold's not out yet, people know that the current game leads into Evercold, that cooler things are coming. One of the main elements that was leading to a lot of apathy that was building for Final Fantasy XIV was a lack of excitement because of predictability. You kind of just know what a Final Fantasy XIV patch is going to look like. You can pretty much time when it's going to come out. Some people love that predictability and the idea that they know exactly what they're going to get and that nothing's surprising. That's comforting for some people. For a lot of people, when you play the same game over and over and over and over and over and over again, you can have a favorite meal, but if you only eat that one meal, you're gonna grow sick of it at some point. Final Fantasy XIV needed to find a way to inject excitement back into the game, and for the future release cadence, Evercold did just that. Now let's move on to the HD Games division, because they say it's driven by stronger sales of new titles and catalog titles, but what went into those new sales? Well, let's read the subtitles here. Launch for Switch 2, launch for Switch 2, launch for Switch 2, launched on Switch 2, to be 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 launched on Switch 2. Do we see a pattern here? Okay, that one technically didn't say that. However, it's going to be multi-platform, so it's going to come to the Switch too. And same thing with Dragon Quest Monsters. Their push to multi-platform has done so much good for them and drawn up so much excitement that I see on social media all the time. The Switch 1 and also the Switch 2 are powerhouses for JRPGs. A lot of Square Enix's games are JRPGs. So while I don't expect them to make many sales from like the Xbox, right? It's still something. I have no doubt that the Switch and the Switch 2 are some of their biggest, if not their biggest market right now. But when you sell your games to more people have the opportunity to buy your games. And while there can still be a lot of controversy surrounding how they're doing the Switch 2 editions of Octopath Traveler 1 and 2, to where you can't upgrade from the Switch 1 edition to the Switch 2 version, which is anti-consumer and stupid, I don't like that. That is a type of practice that has driven me personally to PC gaming. And the funny thing is, Square Enix will still get a sale from me because they're porting their games to PC. So I don't have to deal with the console crap that I don't like. I can play these games on the platform of my choosing. A lot of people out there like to play these games on their Switch or their Switch 2. Not every game is going to appeal to every person out there, but one of the pitfalls that Square Enix have not fallen into, that so many other AAA developers and publishers have fallen into, is understanding scope and understanding that not everything has to be some AAA massive budget experience. You can have these smaller entries like The Adventures of Elliot, the Millennium Tales. That game very well may be my game of the year. I love that game to death. It is genuinely one of the best new games I have played in years. And that true ending that you can get is phenomenal. That game is awesome. The combat's great. The story starts out kind of whatever, but man, it gets so good. The dungeons are great. The bosses are phenomenal. It is a truly well put together game. And they're putting out another game in the HD 2D style later this year with Final Fantasy Resonance. What a great idea to take a story that already exists with Brave Exvius, but as a mobile gacha game, and say, what if we take that story and just make a traditional Final Fantasy game from it? It doesn't need to be the biggest budget AAA game of all time or anything like that. We don't need to engage all the time with that race to the bottom. We can have those big budget entries, hello Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Revelations, but we can populate the downtime between these massive releases with these smaller budget, more focused experiences and games that allow us to test new gameplay mechanics, new ideas, and get them out the door quicker. What a good idea. This is one of the reasons Nintendo does so well. They understand this, Square Enix understands this. And when you combine that mindset with them going multi-platform and now targeting the markets that are eager for their games, that is how you get these numbers, in my opinion, and why I believe these numbers are going to continue to go up. I've talked about Square Enix turning a corner for a while now, and I think we're starting to see the result of that. Square Enix can be an eternally frustrating company. They can do some things that absolutely baffle me, that leave me scratching my head just wondering why they are doing this. Hello Octopath Traveler 1 and 2 Switch 2 edition. Yeah, I have Octopath Traveler 1 on the Switch 1. on. It's actually propping up my webcam right now. If I want to play that game with my new hardware on the Switch too, I would have to buy the game again. That's stupid. That frustrates me. However, The Adventures of Elliot will probably be my game of the year. You know what else might be my game of the year this year, from what I've seen of it? Final Fantasy Resonance. These are games that are not going to appeal to everybody. The Adventures of Elliot is not going to sell millions upon millions upon millions of copies, right? That is not what it was set out to do. Not everything needs to be that massive runaway success. Target these niches because they exist, and you can dominate these niches. You can create your own new ones. You can test the waters, try new things, get more games out the door. Keep your name out there so that people are aware of you. Maybe not everybody is going to want to play The Adventures of Elliot. You should, but maybe you hear about that game and then you hear about Final Fantasy Resonance and you go, wow, I want to try that game now. So maybe you play it and you fall in love with it and then you go, you know what, I want another game with this art style. Let me go back and try The Adventures of Elliot. It's those small little moments that can drive up sales of catalog titles like this. And when you put your games into a whole bunch of different markets and platforms, you grease the wheels and allow people the ability to buy your games without additional sources of friction. So why does this matter to you? Because I believe these numbers come as a direct result of Square Enix trying to change course. They want to put out more games more frequently on more platforms. To me, that is strictly a positive thing. Do they fumble every now and then and do something wildly anti-consumer, like the Switch 2 editions of Octopath Traveler 1 and 2? Yeah, sure. Are they alone in doing that? No, but does that make it better? Also no. But the mass market can forgive a lot so long as the games are good and you put out enough games frequently. I think the MMO division and the HD games division represent two of Square Enix's biggest struggles recently. And the results we're seeing with this report show the result of them trying to change course and appeal more to you, to listen to fan feedback and take that into account. I think that really matters because you would hope their numbers would go up the more they listen to fan feedback and try to correct the wrongs. Because by doing so, if they're making more money, the money people at Square Enix are probably going, oh, we should continue to do this. I think the future for Square Enix is rather bright right now. I'm looking forward to future releases like Final Fantasy Resonance, Final Fantasy VII Revelations, I always forget the subtitle for that one, and also Evercold. 3 of the games I'm most looking forward to right now are Square Enix games. 4 actually, Dragon Quest XII. That only happens because Square Enix aren't trying to just be like every other AAA developer that are fine with like putting out 1 or 2 games every now and then. They're not the only one to learn these lessons. They probably learn them from Capcom. But I am personally all for a future where Square Enix puts out more and more games of high quality that vary in terms of scope and budget, because as they've been doing that, I've been loving them. So here's where you come in. Leave a comment down below with your thoughts on the modern state of Square Enix. What games are you most excited for? And also, what do you hope Square Enix does in the future? I'd love to hear your thoughts, hear your opinions, and hear your perspectives. And when you're down there, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. And I talked about how The Adventures of Elliot or Final Fantasy Resonance might be my game of the year. There's a possible third candidate, Trails in the Sky 2nd Chapter. The game is looking absolutely phenomenal, and they just put out a new trailer, so you know I had to react to it. You want to find out what's going on? You should check out this video right here for more. Thank you all for tuning in. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye everybody, until we meet again.